Good to see everyone here today. My name is Will Easton. I have a few helpers with me in a moment, my daughters. I've got 4 daughters in total. My oldest is 14. She started out as a mini mite probably when she was 4, so I think this marks being a decade of a mini mite or mite coach. My youngest is here to help out, is 6. Julia is 9, and then my second daughter is at a dance event, Anna. But I've been doing this for a long time. My goal today is to cover a few things. One is just walk through kind of a first practice, or the reality is kind of most practices, right? You don't need to have a whole lot of, new kind of concepts. Actually, consistency probably helps. It's always fun to throw something in at the end that is kind of fun that the kids can run around with. We'll talk about at least one option for that. But as far as just trying to kind of help reinforce or build kind of, I think about the major movements from a softball perspective is really our goal for mini mites and mites. So that's what I'll talk through, is how we do that today. And then I'll talk about a few things that have helped move the mini mites game along better from just player involvement, because they can sometimes be tough when we hit a lot of balls right to our pitcher, right, especially early in the season. So how we can get some more kids involved on defense. And then I will also talk through kind of pre-game warm-up for realistically mini mites, maybe a little less, but then the mites as well, so we can have good progression. So that's kind of the focus. Feel free, stop, ask questions whenever you want about clarification or anything else. So the first thing I think Andy already talked about, I always tell my parents, especially at the young age, we really want a 1-to-1 ratio, adult to kid. Now, we don't need that the entire season, but I specifically tell them at least the first practice and maybe even that second practice, I need them to work one-on-one with their own, kid player for, it's probably about the first half. Then we do some group stuff, right? I do that for a few reasons. One, it's going to be more productive time, right? If we have a one-on-one with 6 to 8-year-olds. 2, I want to make sure that the parents are hearing what it is that we're trying to build from a fundamental standpoint. So those that work with their child at home are using the same kind of language and understanding for what we're trying to do, when we're all together. So girls, come on over. So the first thing that I want to do with players is work on our throwing progression. When I think about any type of skill development, when I think about the young ones, or even as I've coached the older ones, like Mary, at 14, and as you all coach, think about how do I break the movements into simple movements and even start with even half movements. So for instance, when we first thing we're going to do from a skill building is we're going to work on throwing, and I'm going to take the bottom half out of the drill right away, so I don't have 4-year-olds who love to step with their throwing hand and push a ball, thinking about all this at the same time when I'm trying to get them cleaned up and do this right movement. So what I will do is when we're outside, it's always tough to typically have straight lines. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll have my assistant coach say, hey, walk out 20 feet for me. And then we became a straight line, and I tell the kids to line up between the other coach and me, so we can try to start on a straight line. I have their parent then across from them, probably 10 feet or less to start. But can I have you girls take a knee on the white line? Mary, you're going to be a parent for me today. Glove on. Let's take a knee on the white line. Flip it. Right here, kid. So what we're going to do, and the other thing is, when I'm working, especially mini mites, even mites, I'm just going to assume that any basic instructions I give, they might not understand. So when I do things like put a knee down, typically I'm going to try to give clear instructions like, hey, raise the hand you throw with, touch that leg, that's the knee that's going to go down. Assuming they, rights and lefts might not be, something that everybody understands just yet. So just trying to help with whatever description I can give. And then, if you see someone who is still struggling a little bit, obviously, go over and help. So, all right, so girls, I want your throwing knee, your right knee down on the ground, and then left knee up. Okay, but I need it nice and tall. Yep. Okay. So we're going to get in this position. Like I said, this takes the bottom half and this whole, moving your feet motion out of it. Jake, will you come actually help be a parent with Julia too? So the other thing that I get fortunate is my dad is at practice call him Coach Grampy, so he's there almost all the time. So if you can, I even have him work initially with my own kids, and then as a coach, it allows me to kind of go down the line to make corrections. But the first thing we talk about then is getting the ball in the center of your chest and that glove hand, and I'll probably, wave it so the kids are seeing which one I'm talking about. Again, trying to be as simple, with that elbow pointing right at my parent. So let's go ahead and do that, girls. Hold on, in the center first. Okay, I want elbow pointing right at Mary. Go ahead and point for me. Okay, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. We can give you a break. And then hold on to throw. So once we get into this position, what we can see sometimes is girls will just turn, but what I want to do obviously is get that whole upper body turning. Then what we talk about next in our throwing motion to try to get prevent as much as we can this, what kids always love to kind of just push the ball. What I found is the best is to talk about making a rainbow with the ball. So we get lined up. I've got my shoulders and elbow turned, and kids will want to do this naturally because it says, hey, it's here, and I'm trying to get it over there. We talk about a rainbow with the ball to try to get that ball out and around, and then I'm going to have them finish by their shoes. So let's send the ball back. Okay, all right, girls. So elbow at parent, rainbow, and finish by your shoe. Yep. So that's going to be our first step in throwing, right? And we're going to do that, again, first thing for the first day of practice with the parent across. It gives me a chance to look and see what we're doing, say, hey, make sure that elbow is pointing. Hey, remember, big rainbow, right? So I can go down the line and do that correction as needed and spend some time with each kid. So once we've done, so that's, again, first thing we do at practice. That's also the first thing we do for warm-ups for during pregame. So kids come and they'll get good at the routine, right? Eventually, parents will go, right? We won't need parents. You'll have a partner on the other side. But that's how we start every day of softball, just to get good at alignment, get a good loop with my hand and ball, and a good strong finish and follow through. So then the next thing we'll do is we'll tell the kids to stand up, and parents can stand up, of course, too. And now we're going to add the feet in. So the best way that I've seen to add the feet in is we're now going to talk to the girls about jumping on a skateboard. So most girls get it even, whether they've ridden skateboards or not, but that means we're going to get them jump to turn sideways. So jump on your skateboard. Jump on your skateboard, Clara. Good. I always kind of chuckle at that point and say, okay, do we change anything different now that we're standing up with our arms? Right? Hopefully, they all say no. So the goal is we've built this nice motion, and now I'm sideways, ready, elbow at my parent on that first day. Eventually be another player on the other side. And whether we step or not, I'm not too worried. Some of the stronger kids will kind of naturally step. But now we're in a spot where we can actually, throw like we would in a game. And now instead of course, the shoe, we're going to come down to our pocket. If we can get to, as we move forward, a step, and we're pushing off that back, and then kind of the foot comes through, that's great. If not, we're still getting hopefully away from pushes and wrong foot position. So go ahead from our skateboard and a rainbow throw. Very good. That's all right, and that's why also I like to walk behind, right? So I can pick up some of those balls as they come. Okay, mini mites, I don't think I'd ever worry about adding kind of the power step in, but eventually what you'll see is some of the kids at mites, probably 2, 3, 4 a team, will get a little bit bored with kind of this skateboard, and they're kind of just lackadaisical, and it's like, okay, now it's time to kind of take those kids to that next step. So what I'll talk about is, hey, you're doing a really good job with your skateboard. I bet you can throw it even harder if we add a power step, as I like to call it. So nice thing, we got lines here. So let's put our toes in the line, girls, facing our partner. And so for the power step, it's just, I have the kids now start with toes facing their partner. They're going to step in with that foot then at that 90-degree angle, come through. Obviously, here we are on our skateboard again, right, at this point. But now we've added that power step to get a good, strong throw. And obviously, when we're playing a game, well, we'll progress. But when we play a game, the little ones, we'll get good at jumping on a skateboard. But where we get to as they get older, of course, field it, use my momentum, step into my throw, right? So that's just a progression I've seen some of our mites. Try your power step, girls. Very powerful. Nice job. All right. So after we've completed that in our first practice, then we're going to work on fielding position. So I'll bring everybody in to the infield. The nice thing is when we're outside, we've got dirt, and then we talk about triangle fielding. So in the dirt, I'm gonna draw a nice triangle, or actually, my goal is to have parents draw one. I'll give an example. And then what we're gonna talk to you about how we position ourselves for fielding is toes at the base of the triangle, and then glove at the top of the triangle. So the goal is to get away from, kids doing this, or of course, being nervous and trying to do a sideways way to field the ball and getting good at our glove out in front. So then what I'll do, we're lined up across. I'm actually gonna have the kids take the glove off at this point and put it behind them, behind you. And we're gonna get into our triangle, and I wanna get the fingertips all the way to the ground. Go ahead, butt down. So we wanna make sure that we don't get in that spot where our head's going down. And we talk about having our hips come down so we can still see that ball nicely and have a nice straight back. So go ahead and get your position. Drop your hips, drop your hips. And I want it right out here. So you can see already how nice it is to have the actual triangle on the ground, right, to point to. Very good. So then what we're gonna do is, because we have the nice squish balls, parents are gonna roll the ball to our player, and we're gonna practice. And if we can catch it, that's great, right? But we're just even encouraged the fact I got my hand on it. And at that point, we've already learned our throwing, right? We've already learned it. So then we can just encourage, jump on that skateboard and rainbow throw back to your parent. So go ahead. So you can see we kind of build this progression that we're gonna be able to use as we field, right? So let's try it again. Good. And we're teaching just moving our hand and like that. Again, we touched it with our hand. That's great. We moved to the ball. That we're just, again, trying to build those major motions versus the idea I sit here and let the ball, roll between my legs or whatever, right? Nope, we're moving to adjust. Then we'll put the glove on. So you can put your glove on. And then the next thing that I'll do, so a lot of times if we have bases out, I'll line them up between second and third or first and second with their parent. Then what I'll tell our parents is, I'll say to our players, probably first, is, hey, this was great. I saw lots of kids, moving their hand to make sure that they adjusted to that ball, but we also have to move our feet. So same kind of concept, right? We hate, there's a hit and the players here, this is where they started and they just watch the ball go by right there. We want to try to prevent that. So then what I'll do with my parents is say, we're going to pull that player across the field to the other, to the other baseline. And I'll tell my players they have to move to the ball. So I purposefully say, hey, throw the ball, right or left, short, so they actually, have to come up and get the ball. Otherwise, it's not going to roll by them or anything, right? So they actually have to practice moving to that ball. Skateboard, rainbow throw, right? So the mantra we can work on is getting that triangle fielding position, jump on that skateboard. The more advanced ones, you could talk about getting to your power step, and then a rainbow throw, to wherever we're throwing in the game. But then once they move, we tell them you're going to stay there, then we move them the other way and just kind of pull them all the way across the field. If you guys want to show what that looks like. Move to the ball, move to the ball. Good. And that way we just pull them all the way across. Keep moving, Claire, and I'll go from there. And I'll do this 2 or 3 times with the parents. It's a good chance. And you can, again, if you can get the luxury of having someone else working with your own kid too, you can kind of see where the team's at. The other one that I think that came up, I watched our clinic again from last year, was catching a ball. Toughest skill I've tried to figure out at this age. I mean, the best that we have, I think, Jake, you helped me to demonstrate last year, is it's a constant reinforcement of above the waist or above the belly button, fingertips up. The biggest reason why we want to do that is because if it's up and then it hits somebody's palm, or it could bounce up, hit them in the face, and we have a chance that we have a kid who doesn't want to come back. But we can talk about a windshield wiper approach. So fingertips up. You could have a coach or a parent work with that player. You could add it as a station if needed, so we get good at trying to move that ball to the glove. You can tell them ahead of time, we're only going to work on fingertips up, just so we try to get comfort. I mean, kids still love to flip that glove no matter what. And then you could say, hey, we're going to work on below the waist so we can do fingertips down, right? And just, it's repetition. I did add some extra kind of skill building for pop-ups. We're not going to see a ton of pop-ups. I mean, we probably won't see a single pop-up as a mini mite. Our pitcher might see a pop-up once in a while at the mite level. But I would say, trying to just reinforce over and over, fingertips up, moving this way versus trying to stab at a ball, right? That kind of thing is the biggest we can do. Okay, so I typically don't, outside of practice time, come back to triangle fielding, like pulling them across the field. Obviously, if you felt like you need to later because kids aren't moving, you could do that. But then in our pregame warm-ups, after I send kids through the throwing progression, then through a hitting progression, which we'll move to next, then what I love to do is have another coach or parent work on kind of our high percentage outs, or our most likely plays we can make in a game. So that's when we'll do our fielding kind of warm up and then continue to reinforce fielding. So if I'm down the first baseline, kids are on the first base, positioning, then I help them line up, usually draw that X in the ground and say, this is where we start. If need to, if everybody sneaks up, then I'll go draw a line, to say, hey, everybody's behind this line while you wait. And then we're going to practice in that case, our triangle fielding, field it, and then, run and step on first. So just kind of an out that's going to be very likely. The other thing is we'll have a lot of bases loaded at mini mites and mites, and I also talk outs. Mini mites, we don't have outs. So obviously we're trying to encourage the plays so they understand how to make an out, but obviously if they get runner out, the runner's not out or anything like that. But at mites we do, right? So you are trying to get those 3 outs. So then with a lot of bases loaded, another out that's going to happen is the third base lady, field it, go over, beat that runner to third. So those are the 2 I definitely warm up, and then as soon as I think the kids are comfortable, the other out we'll practice is grounder to our pitcher, and then skateboard or power step, and then that throw to the first base lady as another way to get kind of, there's going to be a lot of balls to your pitcher. So if you can figure out how to convert some of those to outs, it's certainly helpful, right? Like I mentioned, there'll be a lot of, kind of station by station, bat hitting and running. Is a pitcher fielding it at our mites level. I imagine you cleaned all, I'm going to pretend all the rules completely clear now. So the rule is that the pitcher has to make a throw, or actually players in general have to make a throw to make an out when the play calls for it. So a pitcher fields a ball, base is loaded, and the catcher's 3 feet behind the plate. That pitcher can't run and beat the base runner. We have to get that catcher to come cover home and make a throw. So that's another one that's an out to practice too, right?
I believe the rule was we wanted to make the right play. So that would be an example where that would be if you saw the Twins playing, they probably wouldn't run. They would throw it the 3 feet to the catcher. Same thing with shortstop and second base. If you've got the shortstop fields it, you want to throw it to the second baseman. Where it gets hairy is like if you had a really athletic player where they did make a play and their momentum, they're like running, kind of carrying towards the base, they can just let their momentum continue and tag on the base. Yeah. So it's not a black and white sort of problem. You got to use your best judgment. But at the end of the day, we want to encourage them to make the quote unquote right play. And what that is not always clear.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the key is, more often than not, if you're making it out at home, it's probably a pitcher's gonna have to throw it. So that's worth a practice, right? To make sure that they're comfortable, or I say a practice, but consistent, putting it into the practice plan or game warm-up plans, okay? So the first thing that I'll do when it comes to hitting is we'll take the top half out, because I think especially as the young kids, getting them to use that bottom half is very tough, right? They just see that the contact happens here, and they assume if they can get a good stance, right? If they assume that I start here and this is how I swing. So the first thing we'll do is I'll have our players and I'll set this up in stations. And this is back to especially that first practice or two where you've already said, hey, come help be one-on-one with your own player. Then I'll recruit some to help me run some of these stations really well. So what Mary's doing is we put the bat behind. I'm gonna adjust this tee. Everybody has, I think, one tee in the bag. One thing we'll do then is for this drill is we'll work on from a ball alignment, kind of off your front hip. And then I'm going to talk to the kids about, hey, how do you hit this ball, right? I mean, we've taken the arms out, and most of them will say, well, I'm going to have to, rotate, which is good. So what we'll focus on is just get our feet about shoulder width apart for this one. The other thing that I'll do for this and basically all hitting is we'll have a blue bat, that's the coach's bat. And again, the nice thing is we're outside. So Mary did a nice job lining her toes up in a straight line. A lot of kids won't. If I have that bat with me, I'll take it and I'll draw a nice straight line. If I need to, I'll use the side of my shoe and draw a straight line. And I'll say toes on that line, right? Just trying to give that good instruction. The other thing is if I, back up one second. If I have kids, and especially mini mites, who, okay, they might get their toes on the line, but now they're, standing too close. So then I'll go ahead and say, okay, step back, and I'll draw 2 spots for where their feet go. And I'll say, okay, foot on each, spot I just drew, and toes on the line, so we can get that base in a good spot. All right, so we got the base in a good spot. And then what we're gonna do is work on hitting this ball. And go ahead, Mary. And so you can see right there, big hip turn gets involved, and then that's what we want to work on. We'll still have kids who, won't get there, right? It's a tough skill. Go ahead one more time. The other thing that I would say, I always try to think about is if I'm, a kid, and drills like this into a fence or a net aren't that much fun, right? So especially for that first practice, when we do our pre-game, I'll do it in the fence because we're trying to keep things controlled. But the first practice, I'll find a spot in the field where I literally think the ball will roll the farthest. And I'll give them 6 to 10, and we'll talk about trying to hit it farther than your last one, right? So just trying to make it enjoyable for these kids to see how far that ball is going. One hits a little bit better and they have a little success, they get excited, and all of a sudden they start to do a little bit stronger. So that's my first station for hitting progression from practice and from a game warm-up. So before we even start swinging a bat in a game or pre-game warm-up, I want to get that, hey, here's my memory that my hips do this when I start swinging this bat, right? So the next thing, Kenny used to run this for our team last year, which was really nice, is now we start to add the top half in, and not from a full swing yet, but from how do I train my eyes to follow a ball in to connect with the bat. So what I'll do is the next station then is I have tiny balls like this. If they can catch it, great. If not, I know Kenny really went to the point where literally they just kind of swinging at it to make contact. That was what worked at our mites level. So adjust to what makes sense. But the goal here is, you can drop the glove. We're gonna tell them to get into kind of that, as the season progresses, it's easier, but the first practice we might have to be more instructional. But get in that kind of athletic batter stance. I want my hands where I'm gonna hold my bat, drop your bottom hand to your belly, and then when I toss the ball, what we're trying to do is get the eyes to follow it in, and then connect and grab the ball, or at least touch the ball, in front of the hip, right? So it's that contact and just watching the ball come in and make contact. Now obviously if I have a bat, guess what? My bat does that exact same path, right? And as they get older, even some of the mites will be ready. We talk even about knob to the ball, where literally my knob's going to go to wherever that ball is coming, then I extend and the barrel falls exactly where the knob was. So this is very much like the same motion that we want to get to from swinging. But so you'll see it kind of looks like this. And the fact that she got out there and made contact, that's great. Again, if they catch it, phenomenal. But just encouraging the fact that they caught it is great. If they don't, it's, hey, let's make sure our eyes are following the ball all the way to our hand. And it's just reinforcement. Good. Turn maybe this way now, so that way they can see. Come up maybe this yellow line. And distance-wise, I mean, this is probably about what you did last year, Kenny, right? I mean, if you had some sort of start and you want to, back up to the outfield, that'd be, great. But you can gauge what the kids are doing and make it work for them. But you don't have to be far. So, and the only other thing is, and again, we're working major movements, so not a big deal if we don't get there. But just make sure we keep that thumb up, right? We don't want them to do some weird thing with their wrist, but just that's going to more, closely mirror this swinging motion. So there we go. Bottom half is moving. Top half is at least coordinating our eye hand, motion together. And then what I'll do is put them on a tee, and now we try to get a full swing together. The thing that I like to work on with our kids is not just hitting a ball, right? Because that's, it's a pretty big target, especially if I don't have good control over my motor skills just yet. But the nice thing is these balls that we use have this little star. So when I put the ball on the tee, then I'm going to tell them to hit that star. So the nice thing, the first couple weeks, it's like, hey, we're aiming at the star. Eventually, hey, I'll ask kids, what are we aiming for, right? And they'll all say the star, which is good. All right, so the biggest thing then that we start with, same kind of thing from a ball placement too. Off that front hip is going to be the easiest spot to make good contact. I've seen plenty of coaches want to put it right down the middle, and it's just tough to get extension when these kids are young and don't understand hips again the right way fully just yet. So put it off that front hip. So then what we'll do is kind of go back to even what I started to, from the lower half drill. Feet shoulder width, get a kind of that bend. And what I always kind of tell our kids that we want to get to is that ball, or the hands kind of find your shoulder and come off the shoulder and kind of in a comfortable spot here. One thing to watch is obviously we don't want our elbows in here tight. Sometimes kids will be told, elbows up, and we get like this kind of crazy thing going too. So we want them in that comfortable spot that's kind of in between. So, definitely I'll say elbows up as needed, right? Because again, if they're in tight, but not to the point where it's like clearly, you or I could even hold the bat for 20 seconds the way that they're holding. We want them in that comfortable spot. Okay. For our mini mites, even for our mites really, but for our mini mites, because we're going to start with that tee, and then we're going to progress to coach pitch. All season, I'm going to stand with those players, and I'm going to say, okay, get in our stance. So get in the stance. Okay, give me bad form with the hands quick. Give me bad form.
Like this?
No, I'll just like drop them. And if they're like this all season, I'm going to be behind them, and I'm going to say, hey, this is our strong position we want to start in, right? And then they swing and miss or whatever they do, and we come back, okay, get reset. Do it again. If they did this again, okay, remember, strong position, right? It's just that repetition it takes. And then again, this drill, or even when we're in the games, if we have to, and usually I have to, draw that straight line so our toes get lined up, and if I have to, I even draw those foot placements, and it's that repetition over and over. So then, what we're going to do is, basically we're going to let them swing away, and I'm going to work on hands in a good position. Once they start swinging, it's always tough, right? Unless we do lots and lots of repetition to get everybody to look clean. But I always kind of say we should at least be able to get every player, hopefully, to a spot where before either they start to swing at the tee or a coach pitches the ball, we look good, right? We're in full control. The player's in complete control at that point to be in a good spot. Things can change once, movement happens. But, all right, so if we get set, and then what I'm going to do is talk about making contact with the star. So if she swings through, go ahead. Yep, and she did a good job and moved pretty quick. The other thing that we'll do is to help encourage that follow through is I'll tell the kids, hey, once you finish that swing, you swing through, make sure that bat is scratching your back. So that way, show just that position quick. Yep, so we get them into this position and we get a complete swing. And like I said, that kind of, hey, scratching your back seems to connect with the kids. And then the other thing I can do, I should talk about, so mini mites in particular, like I said, I'm going to move them and move them and move them all day until they get set. The mites, it's a little bit tougher just because we're going to play kind of real games, so you're in the dugout. What has kind of helped is remember, hey, bat tall and high, and kids seem to use that as a way to understand I'm not going to have it lay on my shoulder, it's not going to be down here. They seem to understand if I say, hey, remember, get that bat tall and get it up high, they get to a pretty good spot. So that helps from a guidance standpoint. One thing we can do from how to hold the bat, this is more just kind of kid dependent, quite frankly. I probably have had 4 or 5 kids I'll talk to at the mites level, but when we've got the bat, in our position, what we want to be able to do is have our 2 pointer fingers point the same way. It's actually somewhat uncomfortable, but when we get to this point, that's when we're strongest, right? So if we want them to learn it the right way from the start and reach that point where they can get all their strength into the ball, we want to be able to work with those kids that are going to get some of that concept right out of the gate. I think Julia still almost every time she gets in the batter's box does this, right? Just as that reminder of, okay, I'm lined up. Then the other thing we can work on with the ones that are a little bit more advanced along the way is that concept, like I mentioned, knob to the ball. So either more advanced or maybe strong swing but not making good contact yet. This concept that as the ball comes in and I watch it, if I bring that knob out first, like I said, this barrel is going to fall right behind, right? So less intimidating than here comes a pitch and I got to somehow get this from here to the ball. It's like, nope, I have to get from here to the ball, right? So it's a lot cleaner and easier for that concept. Again, probably not for everybody. I mean, I don't ever talk about mini mites, but mites, either those kids that are a little bit more advanced and you're like, okay, let's get a little cleaner, or the ones, again, really strong swing, but we're not making contact, that can help them figure that out. So then, after we have hopefully, cleaned up some of that, the mechanics, because it's a very controlled environment with the tee, then we go to the hit stick. So the hit stick's still pretty controlled and it's still really good from a coaching standpoint. Come over this way, maybe, Mary. I use this both for mini mites and for mites, I think, right? We still put mini mites, get this? Yeah. So pre-game warm-up, again, bottom half, then we do the top half. We won't have the tee because we're using it at the bottom half only. But then we're gonna go to the hit stick. So then a lot of times, this is where I'll try to put your assistant coach or you will take this because it's, like I said, a really good chance for good cleanup and reminders as to how we get a good swing. So go ahead and get set in your batting stance. So this is where, like, you're in control obviously at this point, right? If she didn't have her hands in the right place, remember, hands are bat tall and high, right? Hey, make sure we have, a little bend at the waist so you're in an athletic position so you can do all that cleanup. And then you can start with the ball stationary. Go ahead and swing through it. And progress to now, why I really like this, a moving ball. So, mini mites, when you go to coach pitching, right, it's kind of nervous. Here comes this ball at me. Well, they get a chance to be able to hit a moving ball in another very controlled environment, right? So say, okay, I'm going to bring this in just like a pitch. And then, I usually joke, hey, I can't hit you, right? It's attached to the stick. Although I think I hit one kid one time by mistake, but I don't tell them about that one time. So now we get the kids used to hitting this moving ball as it comes in and they can send it out. And again, I'm in control of the tempo and the speed of this. So if she doesn't have her hands in the right place or, she's looking out to, wherever, like, hey, remember, focus, I want eyes on the ball. That type of correction can take place right here. So then once they get through this, then they'll go and do just live pitching. And then, a lot of times I've done that. Or if a parent, can pitch or assistant coach, whoever it is, my goal, for better or worse, is to try my best as possible to have them see that ball come out of the same hand all season. So that way they're just comfortable and used to it. Again, for better or worse, some of these kids who, pick things up and can deal with the variables probably would grow more if they saw it come from others, but just to try to create as much success across all of the hitters as possible. If it's me or if we've got a parent or someone else, it's like practice, pre-game warm-up, game time, just get these kids comfortable seeing it come out of the same hand. Andy kind of talked about for mini mites, the pitching distance, when you get to that, is more or less kid dependent, right? We're not, again, nobody's getting out. We're not tracking wins and losses. There is, I think, an official distance. So, if you have those kids that are advanced, great, pitch from that distance. I think there's been, some of those times I'm probably, certainly at 10 feet. A few times probably a little bit closer just to try to help them make that contact. But mites, it's an official distance. We'll have umpires, and if by the end of the season, term, we'll have umpires. So I always kind of think, if this is the pitching rubber for mites, and I'm trying to, pull all of the weird motions to get 2 feet closer or whatever it is, I think I'm going to give my kids an advantage. It's like by the end of the season, they got to hit with the ball coming from that pitcher's rubber. So my opinion is always I start at the pitcher's rubber, and that's where we, that's what they see all year. Again, just trying to create that consistency and that same look because we want them to grow and, get better as the season moves on. Okay, so we've covered throwing progression, fielding progression, hitting progression. The last one I'm going to cover for fun is we've talked about force outs and our throwing outs. The other thing that's fun is obviously tag outs, less common, but still fun. To help with that concept, I always love to finish that first practice, even first couple practices, where we basically ships across the ocean. Kids love it. Our pirates, have to learn they have to tag those runners with two hands to get them, to sink their ship or whatever it is. I usually try to do about base running distance, so the kids are used to running that distance, of course. Depending on the fields and what's out there, I might have it in the infield, I might have it in the outfield. I think last year we were getting rained on, so we moved out to the outfield because we didn't want to deal with a muddy infield. But they have a blast, right? And it just burns some energy, which of course parents always like when you send their kids home tired. And it does really teach the concept of tagging to getting out, whether they'll connect it to that specific motion that day. As the season progresses, you'll see some kids who realize I've got the ball, I've got someone running by, ships across the ocean, I can go tag that kid and we can get her out. So that's always a fun one. Any other fun games you can come up with for the last 10, 15 minutes of practice is great just to have them enjoy it. The only other thing I like to talk through for mini mites, from gameplay and game management. I kind of chuckled the first year I coached mini mites. I was working with a guy who used to work with the Vikings. So his name's Hixie. So I said, Hixie, I'm like, how do you even set a lineup for 4 of the 6th graders or 6-year-olds? And he said, do they have jersey numbers? I said, yep. He said, there you go. So the key was don't overthink it. What I've learned to do after all these years of coaching mini mites is keep them in jersey number order all season. The nice thing is they learn who hits before them, they learn who hits after them, so we get a little bit more consistent, less like, where's Susie? Uh-oh, she's gone, right? Like, no, she'll learn where she's at in the lineup. Now, what I do, though, is because that last batter in the lineup gets their grand slam, every inning we rotate the leadoff. So first game, if you have number 1, they lead off the first inning. The next inning, they become the last batter. Number 2 becomes your leadoff. The next inning, number 3 becomes the leadoff. So that way, everybody still has that chance to have their grand slam. So you want to still rotate what order they hit in, but keep it simple and just rotate by the numbers. The other thing is for mini mites, a lot of balls will go to the pitcher, especially early in the season. So I'll do a few things to try to keep other kids involved. One, I put 2 pitchers on the field. So if Andy and I are both pitching, then I'm out in the field with the players, and I'll say, okay, Andy, you have the first batter. Okay, they hit it, he got it or he didn't get it. Okay, he goes back behind. Okay, Will, you have the next batter. Just because it's going to get more kids, up ball hit to them and keep them engaged. Then what we'll do too is, again, we don't have outs. So where we throw the ball doesn't really quite matter per se. So what we'll do is for our first, batted ball, I should say, not first out, is we throw it to first base. So, and I'm very vocal. So if we've got, Susie at first base, I'll say, okay, we're going to throw this first one to Susie at first base. So pitcher gets it or a third base lady gets it, whatever it is, they're going to throw it across to first base. First batter, obviously that's the correct play anyway, right? Then what I always do, even if the ball dribbles there and the base runner's been there for 10 seconds, I tell Susie, hey, go ahead, triangle field, get the ball, and then go step on the base to finish our play. So we just at least learn that's how we get outs for the point where we can get them. Next batter comes up. Okay, everybody, we're going to throw it to Mary at second base. So that way, second and short, don't get a lot of balls hit to them, especially early. Guess what? Now at least I've got a second base lady who has to go cover a base, and we're going to throw a ball, and we've just included another kid in that inning. Then we're going to throw it to third base. Now, of course, the bases are loaded. Mini mites don't have catchers, so after we've gone first, second, third, we're going to go back to first base. Then we're going to go second and third, first, second, third. It helps keep more kids engaged than a pitcher and a first base lady or whatever it is. It's going to get at least second base has to cover, third base has to cover. The other thing is then I don't set any preset fielding rotation. What I'll do is tell kids, and I have to help them early and pay closer attention in each game, but they'll figure out by the time the season progresses. I'll tell them you can't play the same spot twice, and then I'll also pay attention to things like our shortstop. We're not having them cover a base, right? So I might say, mental note, Andy was at shortstop. I'm going to make sure that he's at pitcher next inning. So we get them into the action. I don't know how many kids we'll have, but if you have outfielders, right, same thing. I'll say, hey, you can't be pitcher or you can't be, on a base 2 innings in a row. And I'll try to pay attention to who my 2 or 3 outfielders were and who my shortstop were. When they're all running back out there, if someone's, at first base again, and I've got someone who's an outfielder now ended up a shortstop, it's like, hey, we're going to make a quick switch, and I'm going to move my shortstop to first base. But that way we keep them rotating, and it doesn't take, a 20-minute, prep and Excel ahead of time or whatever, just to make game management easier for everybody too.